Oh, okay. I'm getting another one from Wayfair, so it's gonna be interesting to like figure out where to, if I use both of them, where to put them. Yeah. Well, the one that I bought from Wayfair was for over the bed, so now I'm gonna have to rethink if I like this one because I liked it from the picture. We'll have to see. Do you think that was a Monet one?
No, I looked up Monet and I looked at all of his various water lilies, and it didn't show that anywhere. And then I looked up water lily in general, painting water lily, didn't find it.
Maybe it's just some random
Well,
person.
I know that she had told me that they were copies of famous people's prints.
Yeah.
So I thought I would look up all kinds of.
We're starting.
There's always more walking in the door. We are glad you are here, congregant or visitor. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey, however you identify, you are welcome in our faith community. If you're visiting here in the sanctuary, welcome. If you're visiting online and want to learn more about us, click on the link in the chat box. While you're in the chat, we invite you to introduce yourself and tell us from where you are watching. We are glad you are here. Now let us prepare for worship with today's centering music.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Kathy Harrington. I serve this congregation as the interim lead minister. This morning we're going to talk about gratitude, how gratitude can lead to a happier life and a healthier life. I'm going to share science, stories, and we'll have wonderful songs. I also want to say that I am very grateful to all of you who supported me during the loss of my mother and during when we all had COVID. We were fed, comforted, and loved, and I'm so grateful to all of you. Let us begin this morning by lighting our chalice with these words from Albert Schweitzer. At times our light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. We're also going to light a special candle this morning on this Transgender Day of Remembrance for the victims of a shooting last night at Colorado Springs at the Q Bar, LGBTQ bar. And my heart weeps that we are dealing with this again and again and again. So our silence during our joys and sorrows will also be dedicated to those victims. My opening words are by Allison Mueller. With thankful hearts, we have come together this morning to celebrate the bounty of the day, to bask in the warmth of this community, to share with friends the tides of our lives, to entertain perennially our hopes for a better future. We join together this morning, as always, to resist injustice and inequality wherever they may be found. Our hearts are touched by the human need we feel around us, whether far away or within the reach of our hand. We come here to be together because this is how we believe our lives are best lived. In questioning and in conversation, in compassion and in service, in gratitude and in joy, in companionship and in love. It's so good to be together again. Let us begin together in song. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 67, verses 1, 3, and 4. Now it's time for our story wisdom. Colleen Finnegan has agreed to do the story for me again this morning, and Steph Garvin is going to assist. So those of you young at heart, if you want to sit down on the floor, they're going to do the story there. The young and the young at heart, and those with good knees. Not me.
Back in the day when this story was written, they did not have microphones, so I was not ready to do that. So this story is called The Quilt Maker's Gift. Little folks here know what a quilt is, but I brought one from home and it's hanging up there. And people sew those by hand, like stitching everything. So quilts are very, very precious to many people. And there are some for sale in our auction. Oh yes, I'm sorry, I'm not used to this. I'm a teacher and we boom, so we don't need microphones usually. All right, so the story is called The Quilt Maker's Gift. There once was a quilt maker who kept a house in the blue misty mountains up high. Even the oldest great-great-grandfather could not recall a time when she was not up there sewing day after day. Here and there, and wherever the sun warmed the earth, it was said she made the prettiest quilts anybody had ever seen. The blues seemed to come from the deepest part of the ocean, the white from the northernmost snows, the greens and the purples from the abundant wildflowers, the red, oranges, and pinks from the most wonderful sunsets. Look at those pictures up there. They are just beautiful. I'm supposed to be the quilt maker, but I don't really want to look like the lady up there. Anyway, some said there was magic in her fingers. Some whispered that her needles and cloth were gifts of the beyond. And others said the quilts really fell to earth from the shoulders of angels. Many people climbed her mountains. Sometimes reading glasses don't work. Pockets bursting with gold, hoping to buy one of the wonderful quilts, but the woman would not sell them. I give my quilts to those who are poor or homeless, she said. All people who knocked on her door. And she said, these are not for the rich. So she only gave her quilts away. That's really wonderful. On the darkest and coldest nights, the woman would make her way down to the mountain to the town below. There she would wander the cobblestone streets until she came upon someone sleeping outside in the chill. She would then take a newly finished quilt from her wrap and wrap it around the shoulders, the shivering shoulders, tuck them in tight, and then tiptoe away. Then the very next morning, with a steaming cup of blackberry tea, she would begin a new quilt. Now, at this time, there also lived a very powerful and greedy king who liked nothing better than to receive presents. And this king was so rich and wanted everything that he even had an iPad. And one of the things he did all day long was to play that game where you have to save the king. He always won. Anyway, the hundreds of thousands of beautiful gifts he got for Christmas and his birthday were never enough. So a law was passed that he would celebrate his birthday twice a year. When that still wasn't enough, he ordered his soldiers to search the kingdom for those few people who had not yet given him a gift. Over the years, the king had come to own almost all of the prettiest things in the world. Throughout the castle, from top to bottom, in drawers and on shelves, in boxes and in trunks and closets and sacks, all of the countless things that the king had, he stashed everything there. Things that shimmered and glimmered and glowed, things whimsical and practical, things mysterious and magical. So many, many things that the king kept a list of all the things that he had received on his iPad. And yet, with all those marvelous treasures to enjoy, the king never smiled. He was not happy at all.
Somewhere there must be one beautiful thing that will finally make me happy.
He was often heard to say.
And I will have it.
One day, a soldier rushed into the palace with news about a magical maker who lived in the mountains. The king stamped his foot.
And how is it that this person has never given me one of her quilts as a gift?
He demanded. Oh. She makes them only for the poor, Your Majesty, the soldier replied, and she will not sell them for any amount of money.
Well, we shall see about that,
the king roared.
Bring me a horse and 1,000 soldiers.
And they set off in search of the quilt maker. But when they arrived at her house, the quilt maker merely laughed. My quilts are for the poor and needy, and I can easily see that you are neither.
I want one of those quilts,
the king demanded.
It might be the one thing that will finally make me happy.
The woman thought for a moment.
Make presents of everything you own, she said. Your things are gone. Your quilt will be finished.
Give away all my wonderful treasures?
Cried the king.
I don't give things away, I take them.
And with that, he ordered his soldiers to seize the beautiful star quilt from the quilt maker. But when they rushed upon her, she tossed the quilt out the window, and a great gust of wind carried it up, up, and away. The king was now very angry. He marched the woman down through the town and up another mountain, where he had his royal iron maker shape a thick bracelet of iron. They then changed her to a rock in the cave of a sleeping bear. What's wrong?
It's
Went
not
little?
previewing.
Okay. Once more the king asked for a quilt, and once more she refused.
Very well then.
The king replied.
I'll leave you here, and when the bear awakens, I'm sure he'll make a very fine breakfast of you.
The king may be rich, but his iPad stopped working. Later, when the bear's eyes opened and he saw the woman in the cave, he stood on his... Did I see that page?
Nope.
Oh, okay, sorry. A little frazzled there. Later, when the bear's eyes opened and he saw the woman in the cave, he stood on his mighty hind legs and gave a roar that rattled her bones. She looked up at him and she sadly shook her head. It's no wonder you're so grouchy, the quilt maker said to the bear. You've nothing but rocks on which to rest your head at night. Bring me an armful of pine needles with my shawl. Once again, the king asked for a quilt, and once again she said no.
Very well.
The king replied.
Tonight, when you're too tired to stand and lie down to sleep, you'll drown.
And the king left her alone on the tiny island. Shortly after he left, the quilt maker saw a sparrow flying across the great lake. A cold, fierce wind was blowing, and it did not look like the poor bird was going to make it to shore. The quilt maker called to him, and he stopped to rest on her shoulder. The poor, tired sparrow was shivering, and the woman quickly made him a coat from scraps of her purple vest. When he was warmed and the wind had stopped, the bird flew off, and he was very grateful to the quilt maker for what she had done. Soon the sky darkened as the air filled with a huge cloud of sparrows. Thousands of wings beating together. They swooped down, lifted the woman up in their little beaks, and carried her safely to shore. I would have liked to see that. Again that night, the king could not sleep for thinking about the woman alone on the island.
Oh my, what have I done?
He moaned. So he woke up the sleeping soldiers again, and they marched in their pajamas down to the lake to set the woman free. But when they arrived, she was sitting on a tree limb sewing tiny purple coats for all the sparrows.
I give up.
The king shouted.
What must I do for you to give me a quilt?
As I said, the woman answered, give away all of the things you own, and I will sew a quilt for you. And with each gift that you give, I will add another piece to your quilt.
I can't do that,
said the king.
I love all my wonderful, beautiful things.
But if they don't make you happy, the woman replied, what good are they?
That's true.
The king sighed, and he thought about what she had said for a long, long time, so long that weeks went by.
Oh, all right.
He finally muttered.
If I must give away my treasures, then I must.
The king went to the castle and searched from top to bottom for something he could bear to give away. Frowning, he finally came out with a single marble, and the boy who received it smiled so brightly in return, the king went back for more. Eventually, he brought out a pile of velvet coats and went around the town giving them to people dressed only in rags. All were so pleased that they marched up and down the street in grand parade. Still, the king did not smile. Now the king fetched 100 waltzing blue Siamese cats and a dozen fish that were clear as glass. Then the king ordered his merry-go-round with the real horses to be brought out. Children cried with delight and cartwheeled around him, and just the smallest of smiles began to show on the king's face. The king looked about him and saw the dancing and merrymaking and all the happiness his gifts had brought. A child took hold of his hand and pulled him into the dance. Now the king really smiled and even laughed out loud.
How can this be?
He cried.
How can I feel so happy about giving away my things, bringing everything out, bringing it all out at once?
Meanwhile, the quilt maker kept her word and started making a special quilt for the king. With each gift that he gave, she added another piece to the quilt. So the king kept on giving and giving. When at last there was no one left in town who had not received something, the king decided to go out into the world and find others who might be in need of his gifts. But before he left, the king promised the quilt maker he would send a sparrow back to her each and every time he gave something away. And I think he used his iPad to do that. Morning, noon, and night, the wagon rolled out of town, each piled high with the king's wonderful things. And for years and years, messenger sparrows flew to the quilt maker's windowsill as the king slowly emptied his wagons, trading his treasures for smiles around the world. On and on the quilt maker worked, and piece by piece the king's quilt grew more and more beautiful. Finally, one day, a weary sparrow flew into her window and perched on her needle. She knew then and there that this was the last messenger, so she put a final stitch into the quilt and stared down into the mountain in search of the king. After a long search, she finally found him. The king's royal clothes were now in tatters, and his toes poked out of his boots. Yet his eyes glittered with joy, and his laugh was wonderful and thunderous. The quilt maker unfolded the king's quilt from her bag. It was so beautiful that hummingbirds and butterflies... Hey, are you guys listening? Gotta see what happens at the end, okay? It's so beautiful that hummingbirds and butterflies fluttered around. Standing on tiptoe, she tenderly wrapped it around him. "What's this?" cried the king. "As I promised you long ago," the woman said, "when the day came that you yourself were poor, only then would I give you a quilt." The king's great sunny laugh made green apples fall and flowers turn his way. "But I'm not," whoops, your part.
"But I am not poor,"
he said.
"I may look poor, but in truth, my heart is full to bursting, filled with memories of all the happiness I've given and received. I'm the richest man I know."
Nevertheless, the quilt maker said, "I made this quilt just for you."
"Thank you,"
replied the king.
"I'll take it, but only if you'll accept a gift from me. There is one last treasure I have left to give away. All these years I've saved it just for you."
And from his rickety rundown wagon, the king brought out his throne.
"It's really quite comfortable,
The king said.
and just the thing for long days of sewing."
From that day on, the king often came to the quilt maker's house in the clouds. By day, the quilt maker sewed the beautiful quilt she would not sell, and at night, the king took them down to the town. Then he searched out the poor and downhearted, never happier than when he was giving something away. The end. Or the beginning. By the way, the quilt that's hanging up there never quite made it to the auction. So if you're interested, you can see me afterwards.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to sing you to your classes. So your teachers will take you and enjoy your day. And now, in the center of our service and in the center of our lives, let us pause to honor the silences of the world. Let us open our hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance. I'd like to dedicate our silence and gratitude for our transgender children, siblings, partners, and friends, and in deep sorrow as we remember those whose lives were taken by acts of violence and hate. The murder of trans individuals has doubled in the past 4 years. In the U.S. alone, at least 32 people were murdered in 2022, and last night there were 5 more deaths. So please join me in an attitude of prayer as I read these words written by Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. On this Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember those who have been murdered for being who they are, those who face violence on a daily basis, those who have lost loved ones, and those who worry for loved ones. May we come to a time when we cease to shame our children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression, and to a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult and confusing. May all of us who live with the threat of violence find support, strength, community, hope, and safety from violence. Amen. And now let us share a moment of silence. And now is the time for acknowledging our joys or sorrows with a candle lighting ritual. If you're in the sanctuary, please feel free to come forward to light a candle of memory or hope.
When my dad passed in 2013, he left behind paints and paintings and brushes. And when my mom passed in 2017, she left behind cookbooks and recipes and cooking utensils. And I felt their absence. And in that dark time, both because of the loss of my parents as well as my own personal struggle with depression, I began to look for meaning and something that could sustain me through the dark times that I was experiencing. And one of the things that I came across was the Japanese art of kintsugi. And in the Japanese art of kintsugi, they take a broken vessel, and rather than just discarding that broken vessel, they put it back together with a gold lacquer so that it's actually worth more after it is broken than it was before. So when the bowl that had been on my parents' nightstand for as long as I could remember fell and broke to pieces on the floor in our home, I thought, here is an opportunity for me to practice that art myself. So recently, I put together the pieces, and with the glitter of appreciation and with the glue of gratitude, I put this bowl back together. And for me, today, it is more meaningful and precious than it was before. And each of us has the opportunity to spread a little bit of appreciation, the glitter of appreciation, and the glue of gold to help those who might be feeling broken in the moment. And that as we share that art with others, then we can make this world a more beautiful and precious place. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. The glitter of appreciation. I love that. So I promised you a sermon about the healing power of gratitude and story, science, and song. So I'm going to start with the science, because I think, they've commercialized. Scientists have said gratitude is healthy and healing, but it's been so commercialized that the bookstores are sagging with self-help books about gratitude. So I want to at least bring it back to a place of appreciation. So I'll begin with science. There's been a lot of research done about happiness and gratitude, and the documentary called Happy, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's wonderful. It's one of my favorites. What determines happiness? Is it intrinsic or extrinsic? 3 examples of extrinsic goals are money, image, social status, and popularity. So we tend to want to, when we're younger, I think, we pursue all those goals. The nicer car, the bigger house, the better job. But the intrinsic goals include personal growth, trying to be who we are, who our truly are, having close connected relationships with loved ones and friends, and the desire to help to make the world a better place. The intrinsic goals are on the exact opposite side of the value systems as the extrinsic goals. As a matter of fact, they are in opposition of one another. Over a decade of research has revealed that people who are more oriented towards money, status, and image were reporting less satisfaction with their lives. They were reporting more depression, more anxiety, less vitalized or energized lives. On the other hand, the intrinsically oriented people reported more happiness, more vitality, less depression, and less anxiety. So money can only buy happiness, it turns out, up to a point. And that point is having your basic needs met. Beyond that, research has shown that wealth, status, and image do not contribute to happiness. And here's some more science. 50% of our ability to feel happiness can be attributed to our genetic set point. This is good news and bad news. It's not your fault. It's not all your fault if you are having trouble staying up all the time. If it's your tendency to feel down, as much as 50% of that can be genetic. This can make us, though, feel more charitable towards our friends and loved ones who don't seem to be as perky as we are or as energetic. Our job and our social status contribute to 10%. And that leaves 40% unaccounted for. So this means there are things we can do to increase our sense of well-being and happiness. And one of the things that researchers suggest is to avoid being stuck in your daily routine. Oh boy, do I love my routine. I thought, wow, okay, vary what you do. It turns out that variety is the spice of life. Do something different. Dopamine, we all know that word, is necessary to our happiness. But it turns out that we have less dopamine synapses as we age, beginning with the teenage years. And so one of the best ways to increase dopamine is physical exercise. But even that, the researchers say, need to be varied. I walk every day. I walk every day. I need to do something different. Mix it up, make it fun. They showed something in the Happy movie about a gorilla run in LA, I think. Everybody running in this race had a gorilla costume on. It was hilarious. So the brain is a muscle, and the old saying, use it or lose it, is true. So use it. Researchers also recommend seeking out challenging experiences that take you out of yourself. They call it finding your flow. You know, when you get lost in doing something and you lose track of time, then you're in your flow. It's a kind of synergy that results in experiencing different aspects of consciousness. I know we can't all take up rock climbing or surfing, and some of us are limited in our ability to move, but it has been shown, it's been proven, that Parkinson's patients are greatly benefited by taking up non-combative boxing classes, or participating in Tai Chi can help with tremors and slow down the disease's progression. We can take chair yoga, learn a new language, play an instrument, get lost in a clear goal that takes you out of yourself. You will be healthier and you will be happier, science promises. What about the health benefits of gratitude? Here's what science says about gratitude and the brain. Neural mechanisms that are responsible for feelings of gratitude have grabbed attention. Studies have demonstrated that at the brain level, moral judgments involving feelings of gratefulness are evoked in the right anterior temporal cortex. People who express and feel gratitude have a higher volume of gray matter in the right inferior temporal gyrus. What the heck does that mean? It means that gratitude wires and fires neural connections to the bliss center. Yeah, and gratitude enhances dopamine, serotonin, the neurotransmitters that are responsible for happiness. Gratitude reduces fear and anxiety by regulating stress hormones, and it fosters cognitive restructuring by evoking positive thinking. It has been said that the two most powerful tools in any heart healing process are gratitude and forgiveness. And Meister Eckhart, 12th century, I think, theologian, said if the only prayer you ever said in your entire life was thank you, it would be enough. That simple statement contains as much wisdom as needed to have a full and happy life. And gratitude precedes forgiveness because it's necessary to reach a place of acceptance before we can be ready for the gift of forgiveness. So this means that instead of directing your energy to everything that has gone wrong in our lives, it's much healthier and wiser to spend each day with the simple prayer of thank you. Several years ago, I found myself in a hopeless predicament. I was a single mother. It was decades ago, okay. I was a single mother with 3 small children, the youngest only 5 months old. The lease was up on the house that we were living in, and because of the divorce, I couldn't afford to stay there. I had found a place to move into, but at the last minute it fell through. I was a wreck, needless to say. My sister swooped in from California to visit for the holidays, and she volunteered to take my sons to Disney World for the day. Mom took care of the baby so I could pack. I was in the boys' room sorting out their toys and crying and feeling horribly sorry for myself. And my sister stuck her head in to say she was leaving. And when she saw me crying, instead of giving me the sympathy I deserved, she read me the riot act. She said, boy, you better straighten up. And you better start being grateful for all the gifts that you have. You have 3 beautiful, healthy children. You have a family that loves you. You have a great job. This is self-pity that is not going to get you anywhere. And with that, she turned and left. Bye. I was so angry at her, I threw a toy or something at the space where she was standing, had been standing. What does she know? I mean, she was single. She lived in California. She was in the music business. What right does she have to come swooping in like Annie Mame and being a hero, you know? Her single life was a piece of cake. I cried and cried till there were no more tears left. And then I started to think about what she said. I don't know what happened to me, but I started to think about it. I started to think about the blessings that I did have. And then I heard the phone ring, and I answered it. It was a rental agency that I had paid money to a few months earlier. Wasn't even aware that my account was still alive, active, and he said, do you still need a house? I have a lovely little 3-bedroom house for rent. It was perfect and affordable. It was in a nice neighborhood, and my sons didn't have to change schools. Serendipity, coincidence. I preferred always to call it my house healing. My grandmother used to always say, complaint is poverty and gratitude is riches. Take your pick. So what's to lose, right? It's almost Thanksgiving. Give it a try. Spend a few minutes each morning and evening and write a little gratitude journal. Try it for at least a week. Gratitude journaling is good for your mental health and physical health. A growing body of research says keeping a log of what you're grateful for can lower your stress, help you sleep better, and even reduce the risk of heart disease. That's pretty amazing. So try it. Write down the things that brought you joy or supported you, and even give thanks for those things in your life that seem to be problems. With gratitude, they can be turned from straw into gold. The gold. I have fond memories of Thanksgiving. I'm grateful for those memories. Big family gatherings at my grandparents' house. To this day, I still have to resist putting the olives on my fingers. Did you ever do that? My grandmother was such an elegant lady, a wonderful cook, and I remember the dining room table covered with lace tablecloth and steaming dishes of wonderful food, an entire little card table filled with desserts. But my favorite memory of all of this was my grandfather, Wilbur Riley McCullough. He was an outrageous character. He had silver hair and a magnificent mustache that he really spent a lot of time caring for. And he smoked a pipe, but he always put on his fancy smoking jacket to smoke his pipe. He always sat at the head of the table, and my grandmother was at the other end of the table, and he loved to remind us every year that she was a lot older than him. Actually, she was almost a year older. She always said that. Your grandmother is a lot older than I am. And here we were with her crystal goblets and her fine china, and Granddad was every year take out his false teeth at the table, simply for the reward of hearing his 6 granddaughters squeal with delight. And it never failed. My grandmother would look over the rim of her glasses with a very stern voice. She would say, Wilbur. But I think about it now, I think she was amused. She was in on it somehow. But I was an adult before I realized that not every family every family has happy memories of Thanksgiving. These are things I took for granted. So, if you're dreading Thanksgiving this year, maybe with an extended family, here's some tips from a New York Times article that I found called A Serving of Gratitude by John Tierney, published in 2011. He talks about Thanksgiving being the holiday from hell for nutritionists and how it produces plenty of war stories for psychiatrists dealing with family meltdowns. And it has become the favorite feast of psychologists studying the consequences of giving thanks, though. Cultivating an attitude of gratitude has been linked, as I said, to better health, sounder sleep. It also shows that feeling grateful makes people feel less aggressive when provoked. Now, this really caught my attention. Start with gratitude light if you're not a gratitude person. And they instructed write five things that you're grateful for, like a friend's generosity or the sun coming up and being beautiful. And so they did this research and they asked people to do this for a week, 5 things that they loved that gave them joy. And they had control groups. So there was a group that did not write the journal, and then the group that did. And the people keeping the journal felt more optimistic and happier. And then also research showed that the study of polio survivors and people with neuromuscular problems, the ones who kept a gratitude journal reported being happier and more optimistic. And they fell asleep quicker at night and slept longer and woke up refreshed. So if you want to sleep more soundly, count blessings, not sheep, they say. So try it on your family. No matter how dysfunctional your family can be, gratitude can work. Just something small, unobtrusive, thoughtful, or generous thing that your family members do one for them, and then say thank you for all the little things, even if you have to search for them, for someone's skills about how they carved the turkey masterfully, or listen to the same stories, the same boring stories you hear every year with rapt attention. Listen. Remind yourself that it could be worse. I love this, he says, when your aunt spouts politics, rejoice inwardly that she does not hold elected office. And instead of focusing on the dry turkey that you can barely choke down, be grateful that the 6-hour roasting process killed all the salmonella and you won't get sick. And finally, the author says, is that too much of a stretch? Well, then when all else fails, remember Monty Python's mantra of the Black Plague victim, I'm not dead. It's a matter of perspective. Thank you all for sharing your morning with us in this sacred time. And I hope you'll have a wonderful, healthy, happy, grateful Thanksgiving. Please rise now, embody your spirit, and join me in singing a song of gratitude for all that is our life, hymn number 128.
Now is one of my favorite times of our service when we invite our visitors to stand and introduce themselves if you feel so inclined. And we have, I believe, microphones and so if you are visiting, please stand, and one of these ladies will bring you a mic. Welcome.
Testing. I'm Beth Bailey. I'm a UU from Sarasota, Florida, and from Orlando. I raised my children as UUs at the wonderful church in Orlando. And I am fortunate enough now to spend quite a bit of time in Candler. And this is my first visit here, and I hope to come back soon.
My name's Abby Rosen. That's a lot louder than I thought it would be, sorry. I'm actually not normally somebody that attends church, and I felt called to come to this church today, and I'm really grateful. I have a child that's part of the LGBTQ community, and they had a lot of bullying last year, so coming today on a trans day was really special that I hadn't anticipated, and it's really beautiful here, so I'm excited to come back and to bring my kids and my husband, and so I'm just grateful for all of you, and thank you so much for having this space. So.
Good morning. My name's Kathy Monroe, and I've been to this church off and on since the late 90s. And I've been living in Southeast Georgia for the last 4.5, 5 years, and just moved back to Silva and wanted to come back to church. So, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Eve, and I think I've been here before years ago. It's vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure. I grew up in church, in Christian church, and it was really wonderful, and I also left that part of my life and haven't been to church in a long time, and have just been desiring that authentic connection with people on a regular basis that you're not paying for. It just is what it is. So it's lovely to be here. I appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you, each of you, for introducing yourselves, and welcome to our congregation. Our announcements run as slides at the beginning of the service. If you missed them, just refer to, I believe it's actually Wednesday's weekly e-news, as everything is described there. Our community plate recipient this month is Beloved, and today's offering will now be collected and gratefully received.
Closing words this morning are from Kathleen McTeague. We give thanks for the guidance of those who came before us. We give thanks for the faith of those who walk beside us. We give thanks for the hope in those who follow behind us, and we give thanks for the love that sustains us each day. May we find in ourselves a deep well of gratitude. May we find within our gratitude our most profound generosity, and may we bring it forth. May you have a grateful and happy Thanksgiving. May you go in peace, believe in peace, and create peace. Amen. So now, please rise in body or spirit as we sing our closing song together, followed by the postlude. And if you need to leave before the postlude, please do so quietly so others can enjoy the music. And don't forget to stop in Sandberg Hall for the craft show. Okay.
You're actually participating in the postlude. We're going to do a fun thing, a sing-along, to take you into Thanksgiving week. We're going to sing Over the River and Through the Woods. We are. Did you know that Lydia Maria Child, who wrote the poem, did you know any of this about her? She lived from 1802 to 1880. She was an American abolitionist, a women's rights activist, a Native American rights activist, a novelist, a journalist, and an opponent of American expansionism. That's hard to say. Her brother was a Unitarian minister. Just so you know, so I think it's appropriate for us to sing this song. It's the poem, the original poem is a little bit longer. We're just going to do 3 verses.